For the past few months, I've been working on a podcast called Event Stars to help people in the events industry, and I've had some really fantastic opportunities to interview some superb people from the industry and beyond. But like many things at the moment, now is not the time to launch it. Now's the time where we need to come together and support each other for what is going to be truly difficult times ahead. So I've been switching it up a little bit while my business is pretty much at zero, and decided to do a podcast that can help people cut through the noise and help businesses hopefully grow and learn during this period. I hope you enjoy it, and I hope that something good can come from it. If you've got any suggestions, then feel free to get in touch. Hello and welcome to Opportunity in Isolation. In this episode, I interview Paul Bassi CBE. Now, Paul is a leading businessman and philanthropist who has interests in a £300 million plus property and business portfolio, which includes estate agencies, investment properties, development land, hospitality, finance and care homes, all employing hundreds of staff. He's the CEO of the Birmingham-based AIM-listed property investment company, Real Estate Investors PLC, chairman of Bond Wolfe, which he co-founded in 1983, and non-executive chairman of Likewise PLC. Paul served as the president of the Birmingham Chamber of Commerce and was formerly regional chairman to Coutts Bank, West Midlands, and is former director of the Birmingham Hippodrome. He was appointed High Sheriff for the County of the West Midlands in 2009 and has received honorary doctorates from both Birmingham City and Aston University. In 2010, he was awarded a CBE in the New Year's Honours List in recognition of his services to business and the community in the West Midlands. And Paul continues to support the community via the Bond Wolfe Charitable Trust, with the primary focus being to raise funds for worthy causes, regardless of age, sex or background. In 2017, he founded the Sandwell Valley School, providing education and training programs for vulnerable young people. Now, the school has proved an enormous success, with over 110 children ranging from year 8 through to 6th form. Paul has recently published a book, Brick by Brick, Success in Business and Life, with all profits going back to the Bond Wolfe Charitable Trust. Now, this was originally going to be part of the Event Stars podcast, which is primarily aimed at people in the events industry and those who want to get into the events industry. And although Paul is not directly in that industry, he does own a well-known fine dining restaurant called Asha's. And with that in mind, we discussed topics around events and hospitality. But given his plethora of knowledge and experience in business and life, we spoke about a variety of topics, including Brick by Brick, his book, success, his drive to be number one, driving teams, his recommended reading list, and the importance of health and well-being. And given the current situation and climate as I record this link in April 2020, and the situation that we find ourselves in being in lockdown, I decided to release this podcast early and put it into the Opportunities in Isolation series, because a lot of the practical business and life advice that Paul offers could definitely prove useful to those looking for inspiration and direction at this time if applied in the right way. So here's my interview with Paul Bassi. Enjoy. Paul, when I thought about what we could talk about today, I didn't want to go over a lot of the same stuff that we went over last time, which was January 2020. But as we sit here now, April 2021, it's obvious that we're not going to talk about the stuff that you were talking about before, because so much has happened in the last 14 months. So I want to start with what is probably a bit of an obvious question, but also essential to what we're going to talk about today. And I want to ask, what are the opportunities that you've seen that have presented themselves to yourself or to the world? We'll start with business in the last 14 months.
I guess that for me, as I've said many times, you never waste a crisis. And that isn't always about taking advantage of market conditions to make some more money. On this occasion, I think the biggest opportunity was to reflect on perhaps how you live your life, how you run your business, how strong or weak your business model was. And for me, we're no different. I got to reflect. I spent time at home, which I've never done, because you wake up in the morning, we all save hard to buy our houses. I get up, I leave, and I come back at night and it's dark, and you really don't spend any time at home. So, we all had that wonderful summer last year, or very good spring. So it gave me a chance to reflect on, what changes we all need to make to our lives, whether it's business or personal. And, I'm not nobody, we're the same as everybody else. It hasn't been the crisis that everybody thought it was going to be. Distressed opportunities don't exist. The governments and the banks have printed enough money to keep us going for the next 20 years. And there are more stimuluses coming out from Europe and America all the while. So for me, the biggest opportunity was an opportunity to reflect, understand your life, understand your business model, and start to implement the changes that are necessary.
So 12 months ago, what were the kind of things that you were sitting here in this beautiful house reflecting on?
Well, to start with, to spend some time at home and with family, etc. So there was, like most families, we were all stuck with immediate family. And that was fine for me. It was quite comfortable. I ran most of my businesses over the phone, and Zoom and all of those wonderful technologies that we've all suddenly discovered. And I guess for us, we've got hundreds and hundreds of tenants. If they can't open their businesses, how are you going to get any income? What I learned from that very quickly was, in the property world, if I only had retail, or I only had offices, or I only had a certain type of occupier, or if I had a portfolio full of restaurants and bars, we would have had a problem. And we do not have all of our eggs in one basket. We're very well spread, and actually we've had mid to high 90s rent collection. So what made me understand from that was, or conclude from that was, that our business model from a property perspective is very strong. Convenience has been very strong. Retail, local shops, supermarkets have been very strong. Our care homes have traded very well, because clearly there was a lot more care needed. So for me, sitting here, going back over a year, I realised that business model was a good business model, and we should do more of it. And we shouldn't specialise. We should continue to be diversified. And there have been opportunities that our businesses have got now that we didn't have before, which we've now got to go forward and capitalise on in the future.
We're all human. We all have anxieties and worries. Was there a period when we didn't know what was going to happen that you were a little bit anxious and worried about anything?
Listen, as a human being, the tragedy of people being ill, dying, whether it's on your doorstep, within your family, or in the wider community, of course everybody's scared that if they catch COVID, they were going to die. And I'm sure everybody went through that. But, you keep yourself safe. And, fortunately, we've all come through it, or most of us have. And, in some circumstances, things haven't worked out so good. But I've really found the whole experience probably the most positive experience I've had in my life, because I've never been able to sit out on the sidelines for 15 months and take my time. So I read more, I walked more, I learned to cook and bake a cake, which I'd never done in my life. So, I did a lot of things, but for me, the whole thing was a positive experience. And I think that was the only thing to do. Sitting at home crying about how problematic the world is was not going to do us any good. Having come through it, the distress, the trouble, the crisis that we all thought was going to happen just hasn't happened. And I know it's still a little bit early, but we're not going to see mass distress, mass unemployment. The banks have printed enough money. The governments have supported everything. We are going to be fine.
And I want to play devil's advocate here, because there could be people who'd sit there and say, well, and say those few words, it's easy for you to say that. Whereas there could be some people who've lost their jobs and then, had to go and do something completely different. Maybe they had a passion for something. My industry, the events industry or the hospitality industry, I know a lot of people have then gone on to suddenly do deliveries and so on. You said it's not been the crisis that everyone said it would be, but there have been people who've lost a lot from this as well. What would you say to them in terms of a positive message?
Yeah, look, of course no one's going to get any pleasure from anybody not succeeding, or projects having to go on hold, or people being unemployed, but you've got to learn from this, whoever that might be. And for me, the lesson to learn is that you've got to have a diversity of income. If you only have one product to sell in your shop and nobody wants to buy it anymore, you haven't got a business. And all of those people for whom this hasn't worked out will be the first people to wish they had an alternative means of income, whether they be individuals who are probably wishing that they had more savings, or maybe they wish they'd have invested rather than spent in the past, businesses who might have just had an over-reliance on one sector. The gift that we've all got from COVID is a time to reflect and to understand that you have to have diversity of income.
You always speak about market intelligence, and that recessions are a good time to invest and go for things that other people are too scared to go for. Has this been a time for you to go for things that other people wouldn't necessarily go for?
And of course people will say, you're in a good position to take advantage of any opportunities. Well, we're in a good position to take advantage of opportunities because we are diversified, and we build reserves and have provisions all the time. The most traditional business of all is the property business, and you traditionally go to an office to look at your property. Well, Rightmove and all these portals have managed that, so people rarely actually go into the estate agent, but the businesses need a base. For us, we hold large auctions, and auctions are typically, we'd hire the villa ground, we'd have 1,500 people there, lots of security issues, but the whole of that has now gone online. Although I do think once we're all back up again, we will go online and in the room, because the event gives people an opportunity to network. It's good for our branding. So we push that business model online. We are, people don't like retail. Everyone says, well, the high street's finished. I can tell you now, I've been in this business nearly 40 years. We've let more shops in the last 2 months than I would typically let in over a year or more, because the retail that we are good at is convenience, it's town centres, it's neighbourhood retail. Well, that's never done so well because everyone's at home, popping to their corner shop, spending time in their villages, in their towns. So our business model is that we've gone online with the auction sales. We're doing a lot of bridging finance online as well, and really we're investing. For me, I'd like to put every penny we've got back into retail. I know everyone else is coming out, but the facts are people want local community shops, and that's what we like at the moment. So, far from sitting here being concerned about being in the property business, I'm not at all concerned by it. Our restaurants, we didn't start delivering or doing anything else that we should do, and lots of people have been very creative, very imaginative, and well done to them. But we have a high brand business. We didn't want to compromise our product. We didn't want people to be getting anything less than what we can give them, which is a spot on a la carte product in the restaurant. So we took the opportunity to close. We didn't make anybody redundant. We've looked after all of our staff. So some businesses we've shut, we felt that was the right thing, and other businesses have expanded.
a lot there. They've got so many questions that I want to lead on, especially about the high street. But I'll start with the events bit, because you mentioned about your auction house and the whole the experience really that people have when they go to a live auction. Me being in the events industry, I've always understood the importance of creating experiences, and I think while the online world is great, I think it's really good that you're going to go to a hybrid model, because like you rightly said, Zoom or Microsoft Teams or anything like that hasn't really been able to replicate the solution of people just doing a bit of networking in the corridors or at the bar at the end of an event. So it is really important, but you can still get your key message across. And I suppose the other thing you've probably been able to do is save a lot of cost from not having to hire big venues in this period.
Look, there's been cost savings, there's been cost spend as well. I believe that everything is going to return back to normal. It might be a bit different, but it'll go back to normal. Nothing will replace human interaction. Everyone thinks that people are going to just cancel offices out. They're never going to go back to offices. My experience, speaking to all of our occupiers, and we have everything from big corporates to small businesses, everybody wants to get their staff back to the office. Their health, the creativity, the interaction, the networking, the energy, the fun, the social benefits. We are all going to go back to normal. It's going to take a bit of time, but the new normal just might mean that during the day you don't travel as much to see people. Some of the meetings can be done over Zoom or Teams. I think people in my business, we will start work a bit later, finish a bit earlier, because people can work from home first thing in the morning. They don't need to travel during working hours on public transport, and likewise in the evening they can leave a little bit earlier and they don't need to travel on public transport again. But, and I know I'm going to sound like I'm burying my head in the sand, events will be back, weddings will be back, corporate events will be back, because without them there'll be no progress, and none of us are going to stand still.
Yeah, definitely. I'm definitely feeling that one, especially given that I am in the industry, and it has been a tough 12 months for, I've known so many people who've been in the industry for 15 years, like myself, and what's going to happen now is that there will be new relationships that will have to be made, because some of the people who were traditionally in the events industry have had to go and do other things. But yeah, they will come back, and I know that just with speaking to some of my clients and people who want to travel abroad as well for events, there will be some pent-up demand. It's just a matter of sitting tight and being patient.
The clever money picks up market share. Yes, there's pent-up demand, but as you've just said, some of the competition aren't going to be there. They've gone off to other things, but the customers are still there. The experiences that people want to have still need to be had. In our auction business, which is a total event business, I think our market share is stronger than ever, and actually we'll build on that and make it even stronger. So I would urge anyone who's in your business, go and grab some market share. Don't be scared of this. You're going to have a great 12, 24 months. And here in Birmingham, the wider community's got the City of Culture going on, and next year's the Commonwealth Games. My God, if there was ever a time to have a global event for Birmingham, it's at the other side of a global pandemic. So, there's a Midlands global showcase about to happen, and I would take advantage of it and grab market share.
Definitely. Going back to the high street, you said that you've had, people knocking on your door to rent out your space. What kind of sectors are you seeing that happening? Because when I go down some of the high streets, I'll talk about one way. I think you've invested in Walsall Town Centre in the past. It doesn't look like it. I mean, are there specific towns or a demographic of town?
There's definitely good and bad in retail. Walsall, you mentioned, Walsall is going through an enormous transition, but it was going through an enormous transition before the global pandemic came along. So Walsall has got too much retail, and some of that retail will need to disappear. The good news for those people that don't know is that the planning rules around retail have changed considerably. In the old days, if you wanted to open up a restaurant or an office or have a veterinary practice, doctor's surgery, medical centre, all of those things, you couldn't put them in a shop. You'd need planning consent for them, and most people wouldn't bother because it's unlikely they're going to get it. It takes time. They would just look elsewhere. But their customers were on the high street. So they're having to have doctor's surgeries, all those other uses away from the high street. Well, under the new planning rules, Class E allows you to do all of those things in a high street shop without planning. So I think you will see doctor's surgeries, dentists, wealth managers, lots of businesses that were not on the high street coming to the high street, but that's going to take a bit of time. But some town centres are going to go through this transition. Villages and other town centres are busier than they've ever been. You'll drive along them, they've got more people in them, there's more traffic in them, the local convenience stores have traded even better, and there's no void. So that's the sweet spot, and I'm pleased to say we've got a lot of it. I think the prime high street, where you've got Arcadia and all these big brands that have been enormously impacted by people buying fashion online, that they are a bigger structural change on the high street. Then just to finish it off, the large shopping centre model, there are too many shopping centres, and it's not the rents that kill the retail, it's the service charge, the cost of running those giant shopping centres, and those have seen a halving in value or more, yet local convenience retail has seen an increase in value. Go to the auction rooms, those properties are trading for more money than they were a year ago, but shopping centres have gone from hundreds of millions to tens of millions. So there is change in retail, but and you selectively got to invest.
You mentioned about the villages and the village high streets. Do you think that we might see people moving out of the city centres into villages because of the stuff we talked about, the work-life balance and being further away from work so you can work from home, and that is going to increase the value of the villages in turn, because there will be more people who will just want to go to a really nice cafe on the village high street, and etc.
If you step back, Birmingham and the wider community is a little bit like a village to London. So first of all, we're seeing an exodus out of London for all those reasons you just mentioned: quality of life, cost of living, environmental issues, and all of that good stuff. So Birmingham and the Midlands is a big recipient of people moving out of London and the South East, which is definitely happening. Of course, HS2 is a big trigger to sort of draining some of the pressures that are down south. But there's no doubt that the villages and town centres are safer. You don't have to travel on public transport to get them. But people have actually had a taste of that local life and realise actually it's quite nice. We like not spending an hour travelling every morning. We like going to our local shops. We like meeting our neighbours. We like picking the kids up from school. So I think people are rebalancing life, and I hope that they rebalance for the long term. Some will, some won't. So, Birmingham, the wider Midlands, is benefiting from the UK relocation, and the villages outside, the town centres outside the city centres of Leicester, Coventry, Birmingham are definitely going to benefit. The city centres actually are where I see the problems. I think office users are going to be less so for the city centres unless we manage to get some big corporate relocations. And some of that prime retail, there's no occupiers for, so they will need to see some redevelopment into mixed-use schemes, so people have got a reason to go there other than shop.
I was doing some reading actually, and quite an interesting idea is whether the city centres that you mentioned, these big spaces that are now coming available because of the likes of Arcadian and BHS and all the rest of them closing down, is whether we could potentially see retirement villages happen in city centres, because they'll have everything there as well for them to just walk outside. They've got the pharmacy there, they've got the doctors there. Absolutely,
and that's what I meant by this. There's a major restructure, i.e. the knocking down of a shopping centre or repurposing of a shopping centre. But having said that, the likes of the Bullring and the Westfield centres, they will probably become more dominant. They'll have to rebase the rents because they're out of control, and they've got to curb the costs somehow, which is difficult to do. But if there were 4 big shopping centres, there'll be 2 or 3, and some of these will make fantastic villages or something even more creative. But that's to be seen, and whoever takes the lead on that will clearly do very well.
You've got a team, you've got a lot of staff who work for you. What have you been thinking about your office-based staff and how they should work going forward? Should they all be in the office 9 to 5, or should they have that balance?
Yeah. First of all, I can't wait to get everybody back, and I would say that generally everybody wants to come back. But we have realised is that we don't need to sit on a train or in a bus for an hour and a half every morning to get to work for 9 o'clock. I'm quite happy people starting at 9:30, 10:30. I'm quite happy people finishing at 3:30, 4:00. So we're making those changes. And we're also going to allow people, if it goes to plan, work 1 day a week from home. So they'll carry on getting their full pay. They'll work less hours, be less stressed, be more relaxed when they get into the office, work 1 day a week from home. So people working 1 day a week from home, doing less hours, I'm convinced will give us the same level of output or even better, and their mental and physical well-being should improve as well.
I've seen in the local press or the news, I saw it on social media as well, that you guys, Bond Wolfe, have made an investment in a tech company, a social media company, headed up by Craig Upton, who I know is a great guy. What's the thinking behind that? Is that something that you are actively looking at, more tech investments as well?
We always look for good talent to support and back, and Craig I've known for a number of years. He's one of the people that we use to do various social media work for us. And rather than just be a client of a PR or a media business, if we are a co-owner of that business, they will look upon us differently as a client, because we'll be a key client, or we'll be the client that's also a shareholder. So what we've done is we've invested with Craig in that business, and it's only been a matter of months, but it's already growing to a proportion that we will now need to revisit how we were going to manage it. But I believe so strongly that if you haven't got a strong online social media experience for your customer base, that you may as well close your shop and go home, because you won't be at the races. You're not going to be competitive. So we will be launching Bond Wolfe TV via YouTube. The way people will do viewings, they'll watch a video of a property, we'll share our knowledge with customers, we'll grow our database, and that's really what it's about. We want to grow our database, communicate better with our customer base. But interestingly, although it was done for us as a customer, we've attracted so many clients that have said, I hadn't realised you'd picked up on that, who have said, what is this media thing? If you've done it, is it something we should be thinking about? And we've attracted dozens and dozens of new clients, and all of them are wishing they'd have done this many years ago.
Definitely, and it is almost a shop window for the world, isn't it? Yeah. You talked about your auction house business now being open to the world, because they don't all have to go to Aston Villa. And that's what social media allows you to do.
We've always been a regional business, and we've almost instantly become a national business. So we sell houses in Middlesbrough, Scotland, Devon, Cornwall, Edinburgh, just suddenly because the platform's bigger. So we will go probably to a monthly auction going forward, and we'll be able to do hundreds of lots. But we will, as I've said before, we will go back to the auction room, and we might do 4 to 6 a year live auctions, as well as online, and maybe a few more online. And in the end, life is always about balance, so the hybrid balance is probably what we're going to do going forward. But I can't explain to people the importance of having your own shop window, but it's not a shop window to your local customers, it's a shop window to the world, and that comes through the internet, through Instagram and TikTok and all these wonderful things that we now embrace.
I think that it's important to do that, but have you thought to yourself which one is going to be more crucial and beneficial to you in terms of a social media platform? Because you've got the likes of Craig and those guys advising you, but personally, have you thought, is Instagram going to be better than TikTok or Snapchat, or is that something you're not involved in?
You have to remember, we have everything from an estate agency business to auctions to restaurants to bridging finance to property investment. Different platforms are better for different businesses. I'm a big fan of YouTube. I don't really think YouTube's still exploded. Now, I know it's enormous, but I just think that the owners of YouTube are going to do more with it. I think we'll all be using YouTube more as a daily medium. So for me, YouTube is a key one, but all the others are platforms that we'll use.
You say that about YouTube maybe not exploding, but if you ask kids now between the ages of 7 and 15, the number one occupation that a lot of them want to do is be a content creator or a YouTube star, followed by teacher and athlete. And that has grown. I mean, the number of content creators in the world, or people who make a living from content creation now, is now 50 million people, which has tripled since 2017. So you're right, it's not exploded to where it can be, and I think it will explode a lot more, and you will get a lot more people who think, do I really need to work for somebody because I can do this from my bedroom and sell a widget or anything I could because of my own skills and knowledge in that particular niche?
I think we're in a new world. Everything you've just said, if we were to go back several decades, somebody was saying, well, there are going to be all these things called shops on high streets and in shopping centres. I mean, this is just change, and you've got to embrace it. The reason why we've invested in this business is we think it will be 10 times the size of what it is over the next couple of years, for all the reasons you've just said. If you went back 5 years and asked somebody what a content creator was, you'd think he was a Martian from another planet, and it'll be a normal job. It is now a normal job.
Yeah, definitely. What are some of the other trends that you've seen up and coming outside of property and your traditional businesses?
I think really the biggest trend is how entrepreneurial all sectors are being. I mean, the restaurant business and the food business. My wife ordered a curry recipe, effectively, from a restaurant in London called Gunpowder. It was very good, little plug for them. And it just turned up on our doorstep. We just had to heat it up. And it was like having our own meal cooked at home by the Gunpowder chefs. Well, in the past, that would have come in some horrible silver containers, warmed up, microwave from the local restaurant. So really, you can have food from all over the country, from top restaurants in London, sitting in your house in the Midlands. But it's just everything's creative, and don't be surprised at anything you see. Embrace it, and there'll be lots of opportunities amongst all of that.
But which of these trends, for example, you mentioned the restaurant delivery, will be here to stay versus is just a fad for lockdown? And I'll give you an example as well. Like we had to adapt during lockdown. So rather than doing big Christmas parties, we created a concept called Christmas in the Box, which was just some a meal that somebody could have, and then they could do a Zoom party with their colleagues. But do I think that is here to stay? There might be a small market for it, but we still want to see people getting back together and having a big event.
It's not that we want to see people back together, and our customer is going to get back together again. There are some temporary business, and the one you've just described, I think, will be a temporary business. Lots of the things around health and hygiene, I think, will be temporary. We won't continue to wear masks and need gloves and all of that going forward. That should phase out, hopefully. So there are some temporary businesses, but we're in the midst of change. What COVID's really done is a period of reflection and change, and some of us will allow change to pass us by and it will be gone. Some of us will jump on the train and go on the journey. Some of us will lead those journeys. But definitely there are some great ideas that are well worth engaging in. And for everyone with their businesses, look around and look at what everybody else is doing with their businesses to see if you can in fact pinch one of those ideas and adapt it for your own business. Don't be embarrassed about not reinventing the wheel.
Definitely. I think even just talking about some of the things that you're actually doing in your business, and we talk again about creating content, and even if people don't always like to see people who are just always successful. They want to know about things that you've tried but you've not necessarily done, because then they can relate that you're actually human as well, and creating content around that is also so valuable.
But please, we are not always successful. Our restaurants have been closed. We have not, for us, adapted to some of the things we're talking about. They don't work for us. We've invested in businesses where we've had to pull out of, and I've never met anyone that's been absolutely successful in everything they do. What we tend to do is fire a few bullets at something, and then when we see something we like to fire a torpedo at it. So our media business is something we'd like to fire a torpedo at. Our auction business we are firing a torpedo at. Property investment and retail is a torpedo for us. And bridging finance, I think, is a torpedo for us. There's many other things we looked at that we're now not going to do. But, those are investments that you make in order to work out which investments you then hold long term. So we're not always successful. There are tough days at the office, but having diversity and being lucky enough to have a great group of people that work around me allows us to always progress. I think that's the important thing.
Have there been investment opportunities where you've said no and they've gone on to be unicorns or amazing businesses?
Yeah, we don't tend to sort of get approached with the next Google or the next Amazon, but over the years there's been a few businesses that have asked us to invest. We've genuinely thought they were good businesses, but we didn't understand them. There was a particular financial services business that I could see was going to do well. The guy running it was first class, and we had an opportunity to invest in it early, but it just wasn't for us. So yes, there have been things, but I don't regret any of those. I mean, I'm absolutely, if I see that particular guy, I'll always congratulate him. I don't lie in bed thinking I wish anything.
Who are the people, or what are the businesses that you've seen in the last 12 months? And we touched on a couple a while ago, but you thought, wow, what an amazing person, or what an amazing concept. Is there anything that you've seen that have really been super innovative?
I think, if I'm being really honest, the most impressive people I've seen over the last 12 months firsthand are some of the people that work for me. My nephew, my son, Anna Durnford, James Mattin, who run different businesses for us, Craig Upton. They've not gone home and cried about anything. They've had a good, strong look at what needs to be done, and they've rolled their sleeves up and got on with it. They've invented bits of the business that needed reinventing. So those are the people that have impressed me the most. No whinging, no excuses, just revisited what needed to be done, and are much stronger businesses today than they were pre-COVID.
I want to touch up on another topic which has been a big topic in the last 12 months, and do this in a reflection on your business career. Obviously the death of George Floyd and everything that happened in America, and then the BLM movement. And you started your business 70s, 80s, going up into to the 90s. Were there times where you felt that your race had ever come into play when, either in an interpersonal way or a subtle way when doing business, and you felt that it could be an inhibiting factor with other people? Or was it just a case of, you know what, this is who I am, I'm proud of it, and I'm just going to crack on whether you like it or not?
So I get asked that question a lot. So, was I aware that there was lots of discrimination, racism, call it what you want, in the world? Yes. On my doorstep, in my town, on the football pitch when I was playing? Yes, of course I was. Now, I think, having reflected on it to answer this question, I got brought up as a Punjabi Sikh Jat boy, and it was to fear nobody, respect everybody, and by the same token not be feared, and to earn my respect. So whilst I was aware of it all, I never saw it as a distraction. And if somebody wanted to behave in a certain way, then clearly I wasn't going to engage with them. But there were enough good quality, decent human beings out there that are the ones I want to work with, whether they're black, white, Muslim, Christian, Sikh, really didn't matter to me. So, I get that this still exists, but, be positive. There's enough good people out there that you want to work with. And if somebody doesn't want to work with you for whatever the reason is, actually they're doing you a favour, because you don't want to work with them anyway. So yes, this it all existed. I got called a packy and a this and a that and the other, but it went in one ear and went out the other, and I'd go and meet good quality people, and for me, honestly, it's not really been an obstacle of any form whatsoever. If anything, there was something a little bit perverse about doing something that an Asian or a black or an Indian boy hadn't done before. So, being the first president of the Chamber of Commerce who was coloured or Indian, I really didn't have time to do that role, and I only did it to make sure that somebody from our community have done it, and now more will go on to do it. So it's never been an issue for me.
But at the same time, you're the one who's been able to, in that position, be a role model for other Indian or black or whatever background people might be, to say there's someone who looks like me who's done that.
Yeah. Well, I'm just a normal lad. Okay, I'm not so young anymore. But you don't ask to be a role model. I've never done any marketing to say I want to be a role model. You just wake up somewhere between sort of 20 and late 40s, and everyone tells you you're a role model. What I've tried to do is be a good dad, a good brother, a good uncle, a good husband, a good employer. And I know I say this a lot, but a lot of that has come up from my upbringing as a Sikh boy. All of those values that are within Sikhism exist in most religions, in most cultures, and I was just really being a good human being, and if that makes you a role model, then fine, and actually I'm a little uncomfortable with it, because I do understand some of my weaknesses, and I don't want to be a role model in that regard. Not that I've got any unpleasant weaknesses, but we know we've all got strengths and weaknesses. Yeah.
You mentioned you've done a lot more reading in the last 12 months. So, tell me some of the books that you've been reading. Something that's made you maybe reflect a little bit more on life or business.
Do you know, I've read so many books that now you're asking me the question, I can't actually remember any of them. I read a book called The Psychology of Money that was very interesting. Okay. I read Stillness is the Key, which I enjoyed very much. I'm reading an Obama biography at the moment.
How are you finding that? I've been listening to that on Audible.
Yeah, I haven't really... I kind of started it without really getting my teeth into it, because it's not a small book.
No, it's huge. 24 hours of listening on Audible.
Yeah. So I think I'm going to save that for a trip abroad to get into it properly. Yeah. But there's there's the new Jim Collins book, which also I haven't read yet, called 2.0. I read, I think it's called Don't Split the Difference or something, which was a book about negotiating. So I've read loads, and I've enjoyed it. I've had time to read as well.
Any nuggets you've picked up in the last 12 months from your reading, or even listening to podcasts or anything like that?
The thing is, I can't think of it. It's a single one as we sit here and speak, but I've thoroughly enjoyed reading again. And you mentioned Warren Buffett, and the one common thing that I've found with people who are consistently successful is they all say read. And no matter how often I nag people to read, some people read a lot and some people just don't. And I always think, that little bit of reading would multiply your output by 10. So again, just read. It is very good at every level.
I remember you always said that you read it was the Property Journal or something that came out once a month.
The Estates Gazette.
That's right. One of the trends I've actually noticed when you're talking about reading is the newsletter business, and talking about the online newsletter business, where around a specific niche, it doesn't cost anything for them to produce apart from the person's time to write it, and people are actually paying now to subscribe to newsletters that come in their email inbox. I mean, I subscribe to one called Trends. I pay about £120 a year for it, and I'll read it once a week, and I'll get access to their community. And I think just having that, when you read, you don't have to just read everything. You can read something in your industry. You can get a book and just flick through a few particular nuggets. Sometimes people get so overwhelmed with I'm going to sit down and read a book from the front to the back. You don't have to do it like that. It's just picking up some of the nuggets that you can when you're reading.
Yeah, I mean, people of a certain generation still like the touch and feel of a book. And occasionally a book is a nice gift. It's a nice thing to have on holiday by the side of your bed, So physical books are enjoyable for some. Some people like to collect them. But the future and the way the generations are going, people are going to read things on screens. That's the way we're going. And you're right, to produce them is far more effective than it's ever been. But you don't have to memorize every page that you're going to read. I flick through pretty much everything that lands on my screen. I don't think I read anything. I grab all the headlines, and then if something's appropriate, then I really, you snuggle up to your screen a bit more and you really focus and read. I guess for me, the one difference between screens and books is I do physically, nearly all the books I read, I physically make notes in them, and that somehow seems to register things with me more. So I think it's a very personal thing, but the future is absolutely reading online and on screens.
Definitely. What are some of the things in business that you see people make mistakes with commonly?
Having average people around them, going to the first guy that they think can help them, not being selective with recruiting talent, not being selective with recruiting advisors. Our community in particular, if we need an accountant or a lawyer, we kind of ask around the family and we grab the first guy that can count or read. And I'd encourage people, always, if you want to go into a particular sector, find out someone who's very successful. I promise you, if you ring them up and say, look, I'm thinking of going into this, would you just recommend somebody to me? 9 times out of 10, they'll refer you to a good lawyer, they'll refer you to a good accountant, to a good advisor, to a good PR guy. So the one big mistake is people just don't ask. Just ask. It's simple. No one, if somebody says no to you, ask the next guy or girl. And just surround yourself with talent. That for me is the key goal.
Do you think mentors play a big role in people's business?
They do. So weirdly, I've never had a mentor, although I've looked up to role models in the form of the Richardsons or the Caledonia family. But really, a lot of my mentoring came from being Sikh and all of that good stuff. But I strongly recommend people have mentors. And the biggest thing with mentors is they very rarely get approached. People are afraid to ask them, but a good mentor will make time for you. If he can't help you, he'll tell you he can't, and if they say no, go and find another one. But I do believe a mentor could save you 5-10 years of pain and get you to where you want to get to quicker and more efficiently. So I'd strongly urge people to adopt mentors.
Just one quick point I'd make on mentors is someone like yourself, there must be some sort of filtering process, because otherwise everyone would want to be your mentee.
I absolutely filter people, and maybe not always directly, because the requests would come into my office, and the girl in the office who would deal with these, as Anna, is a very good judge of character, so she knows whether I'm going to mentor somebody or not. We sometimes might ask a few questions, and sometimes point them in the direction of somewhere else, but mostly it's no problem for me to have a cup of coffee with somebody, just give them a bit of guidance. And I do see the strangest cups of coffee I have had over the years, from people who want to be the next Prime Minister, all the way down to someone who wants to open up a coffee shop. But do you know what? To take 5-10 minutes, half hour out of my time to give somebody a bit of help, it absolutely no skin off my nose.
Definitely. And just looking at your personal reflections on the last 12 months, have things changed for you personally in the way you've thought about the world and life? And secondly, what, as a final comment, what would be the advice that you're giving to everybody out there now?
I've reflected on it a lot. My thoughts are at the moment is that the opportunity out there is bigger than I've ever known it. We're kind of starting from a low base, with a world flooded with money. The average man in the street, I think the stats are that they've got 250 billion of cash sitting in their bank account that hasn't been spent for the last 12 months, 15 months. So the world's flooded with money, the banks are lending. Go out there and get your share of this cake. There's a big cake out there, and there's more than enough opportunity for businesses to do well. Somebody is going to do really well. Somebody's going to pick up market share. Don't let it be somebody else.
And I guess no regrets, and enjoy your life as well.
Yeah, I think that's what we've all realised, the value of health, because we've all had people who've been ill, etc. But take it easy. Don't start so early. Don't finish so late. Watch your diet. Go and visit your family and friends. Don't have any regrets. Just relax. The good stuff will happen.
Paul, wise words as always. Thank you so much, and I'm sure we'll do round 3 sometime in the future.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right. Cheers.
Cheers.
All right.
Thank you for listening and watching. If you've got any suggestions or any feedback, then feel free to get me on Twitter at GurmejSP or Insta at events_Gurmej, spelled Gurmej. Thank you for listening. Catch you soon.